Hey there, Jack and Jill motorcycle out there in Beamerland, YouTube world, whatever you want to call it. We're going to do a regular straight oil change on my Airhead here. This is a 1976 BMW R90/6, and it's a pretty basic motorcycle. You know, kind of top of the technology heap for mid 1970s, but that was a long time ago. An oil change is an easy thing to do, in my opinion. You don't need very many tools. You don't need a lot of specialized as a matter of fact, you don't need any specialized expertise. You need something to put the old oil in, and new oil is really, and a filter. Honestly, the filter is probably the most difficult part of this, just because it's a little fiddly. It's not a normal spin-on oil filter like you might be used to with your car or modern motorcycle. It's a cartridge oil filter, and I'll show you those in a second. It's also not expensive. I think all in, this was about $55 in parts. It's $22 for the filter, a few bucks for gasket that you need for the oil filter cover, 3 quarts of oil, those are 10 to 12 bucks a piece, and a crush washer. If you go to your dealer and say you need a crush washer that's a 300, they'll know what you're talking about, and those are a couple of bucks a piece. So you're in it for $60 or $65. And then you just got to make sure you take the oil to the recycling center of your choice. There's a little more explanation, but we'll do that as we go along in the video. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to ask any questions, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll help you as much as we can. So when it's time to change your oil, you want to make sure that you have all of the things that you need. And of course, I didn't bring any of them over here because I'm going to drain the oil first. So you find your drain lug, and I should probably let the bike rock back at this point to make sure more of the oil drains back. So I'm going to do that real quick. Now the bike has a slightly backward tilt. I've opened the fill port for the oil, and that will help it drain. So I'm gonna clean off. I'm leaking a little bit of oil down here, which I knew. So I'm gonna clean the drain bolt first. It takes an 8mm hex, and make sure you have a drain big enough to hold 2.5 quarts of oil for this bike. This is a gallon container that somebody cut open. It came in real handy. So, and look at that, it fits right in there between the center stand. So that's very convenient. Now this usually is hard to crack loose, and then easy to just unscrew. And if you're doing this hot, like all the internet wizards will tell you to, you got to be really careful not to burn the shit out of yourself. But I'm doing it cold, so really all I want to do is try not to get too dirty. I should be wearing gloves, but I don't care at this point. So notice I hung on to the drain bolt, that way I didn't have to fish around in the dirty oil for it, and I'll clean that off. So it looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a crush washer that you have to replace. And that basically just takes up the space between the bottom of the head of the bolt and the bottom of the oil pan, and it keeps oil from leaking out. Fluids. You use crush washers on a lot of these things. Sometimes they need a little encouragement to come loose. What I typically do with my crush washers is I hang on to them until I verify I've got the new one ready. And then I'll show you what I do. So while that's draining, I'm gonna go get the new one. So here's my oil filter kit. You can see it's got a crush washer, it's got a paper gasket, it's got a metal shim, and it's got a white rubber O-ring. We'll talk more about that when I change the oil filter. But I'm gonna pull out the crush washer right now. So once I verify I've got my new crush washer, I put it on the drain bolt. And then I take my old crush washer and I bend it to make sure I don't accidentally reuse the old one. There's also, yeah, no problem. There's also a lot of discussion on whether you should use OEM or aftermarket oil filters. As far as I know, these are actually made in the same factory. I can't state that that is 100% pure D a fact. I think it's true, but the point is, you gotta have a new oil filter. I'm gonna use the BMW one, and as you can see, it's a hinged type, no different than the full straight one. So that one's straight. This is made in Austria on it. That says made in Austria on it. It's hard to see, but they're the same height once you sandwich the pieces together. So the oil filter is behind this cover. We're on the right side of the bike. That's where your right leg goes. And there's 3 bolts. Looks like 2 Allens, 3 Allens. So these are probably aftermarket, or installed by, as a matter of fact, I think I did that. So the first thing you should do is clean it. Hit that with a little cleaner. And that's gonna make a little bit of a mess. You just clean up the mess when you're done. And the main reason you clean these is so that you can see if you have new leakage from that thing later on. Now, obviously, this bike is leaking oil from somewhere, and that's okay. It's an old bike. I don't know if you can see the push rod tubes here, the seals. Those seals are definitely leaking. This is atypical, but I'm gonna need another Allen. I think that's gonna be, so I'm using this wobble end one, because this one's, the bottom one is hard to see. It's hard to get to. Let's see if I can show you. There, this one. You gotta kind of go over the top of the exhaust there. So first what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the drain bolt back in because I need to move the catch pan. So I'm gonna wipe this. The vast majority of the oil is out now. And just be real careful not to drop your drain plug, because that's just embarrassing. I got my handy dandy cheat sheet. Oil drain plug, 30 Newton meters. 30, whoops, Newton meters. Wait for it to quit blinking. It sets itself to 0 to tell you you're ready to go. And I can't see the readout, so we'll just listen to the, there we go. Just double check that. And 31.2, so we're good. Now I'm gonna move the catch pan over carefully so I don't spill all the friggin' oil, because that's exactly something I would do. We're gonna start taking these out. So. No telling when when oil's gonna start coming out, so I'll just be careful. 2, 3. Now, if there's a bunch of oil behind this cover, because that's all this is just a cover, then that's a problem. Notice I hung on to the washer. You don't want to lose those washers. They go right into the dirty oil. Sometimes they stick to the cover, so that's when it's good to have this little proby tool to get it broke loose. I can pop that cover off, and behind that cover should be a paper gasket. Oh, look at that, paper gasket. And that goes in the trash. We're gonna replace it. That's coming off way easier than the valve cover gasket did. So we'll give this a wipe down so it's clean for next time. You can see it's got oil on the outside. The cover itself is not leaking, that oil is leaking from somewhere else. So we just wanna make sure that all the residue is off, because otherwise that could keep it from sealing properly. You notice no oil came out, so that's good. This cover is holding all the oil in. So that looks like a 15 or a 16, we'll see. Actually, that's a 17. And it's a little close to the exhaust pipe for my taste, so I'm gonna get a shorter socket and an extension. Okay, my shorter socket is a 1/2-inch drive, so I needed a adapter. This is gonna give me plenty of room. This is gonna be a little messy. I'm gonna try real hard not to drop that cover into the dirty oil. Hey, all right, I did it. So you can see what that is. It's just a cover. Oops, dripping oil. So I'm gonna clean that up and get that ready to go back on. That's clean and ready to go back on. Now I'm gonna pull the filter out, and it looks like that O-ring got a little smashed. That is actually a hinged filter. I'll have to make sure I clean off the exhaust before I put it all back together, because that'll just burn on there and it'll stink. It just helps get the rest of the residue off, because nobody likes the smell of burning oil. Least of all, me. You can see the hinged oil filter there, 2 pieces, and this has to get put in proper recycling, and you can't just throw that in the garbage. Now you got to clean this. So I verified on the end of the filter that the black O-ring is indeed out, and that's critically important. The hinged filters are a lot easier to install if the exhaust is still on, so it's a little more convenient. But I'm gonna do the same thing that you would do with a cartridge filter. I'm gonna get the O-rings a little oily. Once again, I'm still looking to make sure there's no O-ring. Even though I know there's no O-ring, I'm still looking to make sure. And you have to get it all the way in and get it seated. Then this cover is gonna go back on. There we go. You wanna make sure that it's seated far enough so that you can push it in, which compresses the hinge, because the bolt, the cover bolt, is gonna thread into that pipe. So now I'm gonna, and I apologize for my hands kind of being in the way. Let's see if I can switch this. Can I do that left-handed? And the answer is, yeah, sorta. There we go. Remember, I got to torque this to 41 Newton meters, but I just want to get it to seat first. And even though I said 41, I'm going to check my list. Oil filter inner cover, 41 Newton meters. And actually, I'm going to go a little shy of that, because I know that I tend to get a little heavy at the end. And now I can watch it. You can't see it, but I can watch it. That feels like a lot, doesn't it? I'm gonna stop there. Now, you might notice when I pull this out, I'm not gonna use the shim and I'm not gonna use the O-ring, because when I took this out, mine had neither of those things. This is where they would be. And the reason I'm not using them is because of this. My bike does not have an oil cooler. So you see on here, there's no shim, there's no O-ring. There's the shim, there's the O-ring. So that is only for the oil cooler. This does not have an oil cooler, therefore it doesn't get either of those things. This is it. They call it the $2,000 O-ring, because if you don't get it installed correctly, your bike will explode, basically, and you have to get the engine rebuilt. I don't know anybody that rebuilds engines for $2,000 anymore, so it's really probably more like a $4,000 or $5,000 O-ring. The shim gives it a flat surface to push against. That would be, and see, it's not gonna fit. It just doesn't fit. It's not gonna stay on. So no oil cooler, no shim, no O-ring, you're all set. But you do need a new paper gasket. And remember, this is just a cover. It's the the cover that we just put on over the filter and torqued to 41 Newton meters that's doing all the work. These get torqued to 10 Newton meters, which is not very much, to be perfectly honest. Tighten each of them a little bit before I tighten any of them all the way. Oh, I guess we'll start with that one. Yeah, got that one to 10 pretty quick. All right, there we go. So that's done. Next is putting in the oil, which is pretty easy. Take out the dipstick, wipe out the dipstick so it doesn't make a mess. The oil needs to be between these two lines. And you can see where it says Nicht über Max, which was the original title of the MOA garage videos. And that's where we got it from. Now this also has a crush washer, but you don't need to replace it unless it looks deformed. It's not something you have to replace all the time. So I'm gonna scare up a funnel. So I just realized I forgot to hit record, but this is the oil that we're gonna put in it. A lot of people recommend this stuff, including George and other people I know. 2050, it's supposed to have the right mix of the right additives. The bike takes 2¼ liters, which is about 2½ quarts. So I have 2 of these, and then I have my extra that I use to top it off because I know it leaks oil. So this was a little over a half, I used most of this. I put the dipstick back in because reading it off the dipstick doesn't do you any good until you start the bike. Now we're gonna start the bike and see if it leaks oil out of the drain plug, or you can see right here, this is the bottom of the cover for the oil filter. I verified my neutral light is on. Oh, gotta turn on the gas. I don't see any oil coming out. I don't see any oil coming out. Dry. Bike off. Now the used crush washer goes in the garbage, and the used oil goes into the drain pan. We'll be right back with the same drain pan because we're going to use it on all the other systems. So that was the oil change. As you could see, other than the oil filter itself being a little fiddly, it's not difficult. Can be a little bit messy. You should probably wear gloves. I didn't wear gloves, but you know, that's just kind of because. And it's one of those things that I think anybody can do. I like to change the engine oil every 2,500 miles. That gives me a little bit of breathing room. By the time I get to 3,000 miles, I'm definitely changing the oil. I don't always do everything else. That's what I consider, for me, it's a minor service interval. Every 5,000 miles, that's when I'm replacing all the gear oil. If I didn't replace the oil filter at 2,500 miles, I might or might not do, depending on the kind of riding I've been doing. Right now, my bike is leaking a fair amount of oil. So by the time I get to 2,500 miles, it's not all the original oil that I put in anyways. It's not, you know, a huge amount, but the push rod tubes seals leak, and I know that. I think the oil pan is leaking a little bit. I need to address that with a new gasket and some cleaning and retorquing those bolts. You know, there's just more considerations on my personal bike that may not affect yours. Because I think I have a leak in my oil pan gasket, the next time I change the oil, I'm gonna drop the oil pan gasket, the oil pan, clean the mating surfaces, replace the gasket, clean out the oil pan, and I might replace the inner parts just to have them refreshed. I'm sure everything in there is 50 years old except the oil. Thanks again to Morton's BMW and of course the BMW MOA for giving me the opportunity to do these videos. Next up is the transmission oil, which if you thought this was easy, the transmission oil, the final drive oil, the drive shaft oil, they're even easier. So if you conquered the oil change, you're gonna easily be able to do the rest. and it is right where it should be.